Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. In a small town where appearances reign supreme, Mark Jefferson, a black judge respected throughout the state for his integrity and strictness, decides to take a day off to enjoy a leisurely lunch at a local cafe. Relaxed, he has no idea that this simple moment will turn into chaos. As soon as he enters, he attracts the attention of Emma Collins, a city police officer known for her authoritarian temperament and quick judgment. Seeing Mark sitting calmly and glancing at his phone, she immediately assumes he's breaking a minor cafe rule. Without pausing to comprehend, she walks up to him, interrupts him in a humiliating manner, and begins to lecture him in front of all the customers, using a condescending tone and demeaning words. Mark remains calm, but his eyes betray a cold, contained anger. The customers murmur, some embarrassed, others amused. The policewoman, satisfied with her supposed authority, has no idea that the man she is humiliating is Mark Jefferson, the judge who convicted several corrupt officers in the region, a man whose name inspires respect and fear throughout the judicial system. When the truth comes out, the situation promises to turn completely against her, exposing not only her lack of professionalism, but also the fragility of her own reputation. Mark Jefferson pushed open the door of the small corner cafe, savoring the sweet aroma of freshly brewed coffee. After weeks of heavy casework and tense trials, he'd finally taken a day off. The sun filtered through the windows, creating patterns on the polished wooden floor. He sat down at his usual desk, took out his phone, and checked some notes for his upcoming trial. The world outside seemed peaceful, far from the hustle and bustle of the courtroom. But the tranquility was short-lived. Emma Collins, the local police officer, entered shortly after. Her gait was stiff, her gaze searching. She had noticed Mark sitting alone, and in her mind, a suspicious situation was emerging. Approaching with authority, she addressed him. "Sir, you can't stay here like this. Show me your ID immediately." Mark looked up, surprised but polite. "Excuse me? I'm just here for lunch." Emma wasn't listening. The customers began to watch, some intrigued, others uncomfortable. Emma's words became harsher, her tone more condescending. "I asked for your papers. We can't just stand here and do whatever we want." Mark remained calm, but his eyes flashed with suppressed anger. "You don't know me," he said, trying to reason with the policewoman. But Emma didn't know. To her, he was just another black man in town, an easy target for authority. She continued her humiliation, in front of all the customers, speaking loudly, her fingers pointed, her expression closed. Mark put down his phone and took a deep breath. He knew that one wrong move could turn this humiliation into a major incident. But he was ready. Very soon, the truth about who he was would come out, and the scales of justice would tip heavily in favor of the man they had just humiliated. The murmur of customers filled the cafe. Some whispered among themselves, others silently observed the scene. Emma Collins, convinced she was exercising her legitimate authority, failed to notice the reproachful looks around her. Mark Jefferson stood up slowly, each movement measured, each gesture calculated. He didn't shout, he didn't lose his composure, but his aura already commanded respect. The whispers gradually died down. "Listen to me," he said in a deep, firm voice. "I'm not here to discuss your alleged offenses. I'm Mark Jefferson, a state superior court judge." A shocked silence fell over the cafe. Customers turned around in disbelief. Some stammered his name, finally recognizing the imposing figure of the black judge who had led several famous cases against corruption in the police and local politics. Emma took a step back, her cheeks flushed with shame and anger. She had humiliated a man she should have respected, unaware that he was one of the most respected figures in the justice system. You're Judge Jefferson," she whispered, trying to compose herself. Mark nodded slowly, implacable. "Exactly. And believe me, your behavior today will not go without consequences." The customers, initially spectators, began to whisper among themselves about the humiliation inflicted by the policewoman. The atmosphere in the cafe was now electric, everyone sensing that the situation had completely changed. Mark sat down again, but this time with an almost menacing calm. Emma, now aware of the magnitude of her mistake, knew she had just made a misstep that would haunt her. But how would she react now that the person she had humiliated held all the legal power to put her in her place? And in his mind, Mark knew that the lesson he was about to give Emma would not just be a personal correction, but a reminder that respect cannot be commanded, it must be earned. The cafe was now plunged into a heavy silence. Even the most talkative customers had stopped talking, captivated by the palpable tension between Mark Jefferson and Emma Collins. Emma, still flushed with shame, clenched her fists under the table. She didn't dare speak anymore, but her pride refused to let her escape the situation. Mark, sitting with a calm but imposing posture, stared at her with icy intensity. "I guess you realize now what a mistake you just made," he said slowly, his voice echoing throughout the cafe. Emma nodded, her throat tight. I didn't know you were." "Don't finish that sentence," Mark interrupted. "You don't need to know who I am to understand that no one, absolutely no one, deserves to be humiliated like that." Customers began to exchange glances, some murmuring silent encouragement. A woman at the counter whispered, "She really overdid it." Emma felt the air grow heavy around her. She had been the police officer, the one with the power, but now she felt vulnerable, exposed in front of everyone. Mark stood slowly, each movement calculated to assert his authority without a word of violence. He approached Emma, who instinctively backed away, aware that this judge's power extended far beyond the confines of the courtroom. "What you just did, Emma, must never happen again," he said calmly, but each word weighed like a hammer on his conscience. "I am not just a judge. I am someone who ensures that justice is done, even against those who hold authority and abuse it." Emma looked down, unable to meet his gaze. She finally understood that her behavior could no longer be ignored. She had unfairly humiliated a man, and now the world seemed to be a stark reminder that actions have consequences, no matter your position. Mark took a step back, letting the tension hang in the air, like a silent warning. Then, without another word, he sat back down. But Emma knew it wasn't over yet. The lesson had only just begun, and she was about to discover that justice can strike where you least expect it. The next day, Emma Collins arrived at the police station with a sense of unease she'd never known. Every step seemed to resonate louder, as if the walls themselves were whispering her public humiliation. Her colleagues greeted her politely, but their looks were different, some curious, others suspicious. Emma didn't yet know that Mark Jefferson wasn't going to be satisfied with this slight alone. The judge, thanks to his position and contacts, had already begun to spread the news of the incident. Not for personal revenge, but so that justice would be done and his humiliation would serve as a lesson to those who abused their authority. In her office, Emma received an official call from the Superior Court. Her voice trembled slightly as she answered. "Commissioner Collins, we have been informed of your inappropriate conduct towards a citizen. We would like you to provide a written explanation within 48 hours." Her cheeks flushed. Her colleagues watched her silently, some with a small smile. For the first time, Emma felt the fragility of her power. She, who was used to intimidating and controlling, now found herself on the defensive. In another office, Mark Jefferson watched the situation with calm and quiet satisfaction. He didn't need to directly threaten Emma for consequences to be seen. Justice, he thought, doesn't need anger to be effective. It only needs truth and consistency. That day, Emma realized that every word, every gesture, every humiliation inflicted on others could come back to haunt her. She already felt the weight of the stares and the whispers, the invisible but relentless pressure of a system that does not tolerate abuse. Mark, meanwhile, continued his day as if nothing had happened, letting the forces of justice take their course. The lesson had barely begun, and Emma was going to learn, one way or another, that authority without respect is doomed to collapse. A few days after the incident, Emma Collins began to feel the effects of her behavior in tangible ways. Her colleagues now regarded her with caution, some even avoiding speaking to her. Her superiors at the police station had asked her to write a detailed report on the incident, a document that would be reviewed by higher-ups and the superior court. Every word she wrote seemed to carry a ton of weight. She knew that Mark Jefferson, the judge she had humiliated, had the power to influence her career in subtle but effective ways. Even without directly threatening her, his position as a respected judge made Emma's every action open to scrutiny and evaluation. Meanwhile, Mark did nothing visible. He continued his daily life, but every administrative decision and every contact in the city was used with precision to remind Emma that her actions had consequences. Anonymous calls concerning the conduct of police officers in the city, inquiries into clumsy procedures, everything seemed to converge on her, without her being able to identify the source. One morning, when she arrived at the police station, she found a small note slipped under her door. No name, no distinguishing marks. Just these words. Justice never forgets. Emma felt a shiver run down her spine. She realized the public humiliation in the cafe was just the beginning. Mark's power lay not just in his official position, but in his ability to use the system with patience and precision. This realization forced her to reflect on her own behavior, her prejudices, and the way she treated citizens. She knew that every miscalculated step could now have consequences for her reputation, her career, and her honor. Mark, meanwhile, discreetly observed the effects of his actions. He wasn't seeking personal revenge, but subtle and effective justice. Emma would learn, sometimes the hard way, that authority is worthless without respect and integrity. Emma Collins finally felt the weight of her mistakes. The suspicious looks of her colleagues and the incessant whispers about her in the police station made her reflect deeply. For the first time in a long time, she felt a true inner humiliation, the kind that slowly erodes pride and forces one to question oneself. She then decided to take action, to repair, or at least attempt to repair, her mistake. After several hours of reflection, she wrote an official letter to Mark Jefferson, in which she expressed her most sincere apologies for his unacceptable behavior. I acknowledge that my behavior was disrespectful and inappropriate, she wrote. I sincerely apologize and promise not to act with prejudice or undue authority again. But Mark, cautious and experienced, knew that mere words were not enough. He waited a moment before replying, wanting to see if Emma truly understood the gravity of his actions. When he finally replied, it was not with a simple, accepted, but with a measured and direct letter. Ms. Collins, your apology is noted. True understanding comes from consistent actions and lasting behavior change. I will listen to your actions more than your words. Emma read and reread this reply. Each sentence seemed to weigh a ton, reminding her that redemption is not won with words, but through constant and sincere actions. She began to observe her own behavior with newfound attention. Every interaction with citizens, every police intervention, she was reminded of the consequences of her pride and haste. She found herself instinctively correcting herself, speaking calmly, and listening before judging. Mark, for his part, watched from afar. He wasn't trying to punish her further, but to show her that true justice involves responsibility, humility, and respect for every individual, regardless of their social or racial position. For Emma, this was the beginning of a long journey. The lesson learned in the cafe was now becoming a life experience, and she was beginning to understand that power and authority are empty if they are not accompanied by respect and integrity. A few weeks after the incident, a critical situation arose at the police station. A sensitive case involving a vulnerable citizen and a complaint of abuse of power was filed, and Emma Collins was assigned to handle the investigation. It was an unexpected test of her skills, but more importantly, of her demeanor and integrity. As she made her way to the scene, Emma felt the tension rising. She remembered Mark Jefferson's implicit advice and the humiliation she had suffered. This time, she didn't want to make a mistake. Every word, every gesture had to be precise, measured, and respectful. The citizen involved, a black man named Daniel Harris, had been the victim of an unjust situation. Emma listened to him attentively, asking pointed questions but with an empathetic tone, without judging or assuming anything. She saw how careful listening could radically change the dynamics of a tense situation. Meanwhile, Mark Jefferson was discreetly following the case through professional contacts. He carefully observed Emma's actions, ready to note whether she had truly learned her lesson. Every decision, every interaction mattered. Emma handled the case with integrity, delivering justice to the citizen and correcting administrative errors that could have caused further harm. Her superiors noted her change in behavior and her ability to handle a delicate situation without abusing her authority. At the end of the day, as she left the precinct, Emma felt a mixture of relief and pride. She had taken an important step in her redemption. She knew Mark Jefferson was still watching, and one day he would judge whether her change was real and lasting. For Mark, this ordeal confirmed one thing: justice was not just a matter of law, but also of morality, respect, and responsibility. Emma now had a real chance to prove that she could learn from her mistakes and become a better agent. But the road to true redemption was not yet over. More tests awaited him, situations where his judgment and patience would be tested more severely than ever. A few weeks later, a public event was held in the city, an award ceremony for citizens and officers who had demonstrated courage and integrity. Emma Collins attended, not only to represent the police department, but also to demonstrate that she was serious about the changes she had undertaken. Mark Jefferson was also present, invited to present an award to a citizen. As soon as Emma saw the judge, her heart raced. The memory of the coffee and the past humiliation came back to her with painful clarity. As the ceremony drew to a close, a minor incident occurred. A key witness to the event was manhandled by an attendee, and the situation threatened to escalate. Without hesitation, Emma intervened, applying everything she had learned: calm, respect, listening, and impartiality. She managed to defuse the tension before anyone lost patience, avoiding a public scandal. Mark Jefferson, observing the scene, gave a small smile. To him, this act showed that Emma had learned her lesson: respect and integrity are not just abstract concepts, but concrete practices that are applied in critical moments. After the ceremony, Mark approached Emma. This time, his tone was less severe, but each word still carried the same weight. "You handled this situation with discernment. A long time ago, I didn't think you would learn so quickly, but it seems you're on the right track." Emma felt a mixture of relief and gratitude. She knew her road to redemption wasn't over, but she had just taken a major step, the first real acknowledgement of her change in front of an audience and the very person she had humiliated. For the first time, Emma understood that justice was not a mere legal or institutional concept; it was a subtle art that combined power, responsibility, and respect for others. And Mark Jefferson, with his discreet but effective manner, had just shown her how true authority is exercised with wisdom and integrity. The weeks following the ceremony were decisive for Emma Collins. Aware that her actions spoke louder than her words, she took numerous initiatives to demonstrate her change in behavior. Every intervention, every investigation, every interaction with citizens was now guided by listening, respect, and caution. One day, a young black teenager was wrongly accused of petty theft in a rough part of town. Emma, remembering her own mistakes, took the time to understand the situation. She listened to the witnesses, examined the evidence, and quickly discovered that the teenager was innocent. Rather than simply letting him go, she took the time to talk with him, encourage him, and inform him of his rights. She also made sure he received the support he needed to avoid falling into a similar situation again. Mark Jefferson, informed of her initiative, looked at the reports and smiled inwardly. For him, this gesture represented the real change. Emma had not only learned to control herself in front of him, but she was now applying respect and justice in real life, protecting those in need. At a court meeting, Mark quietly called her in to discuss her progress. He looked her straight in the eye and said calmly, "Emma, you have learned what many never understand: justice is not about wielding power, but about protecting those in need. You have proven yourself." Emma felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It was no longer just Mark's recognition that mattered, but the conviction that she had truly changed. The lesson of that coffee, humiliating but necessary, had transformed into a profound transformation of her personality and her way of exercising authority. For the first time in a long time, she felt proud, not of her rank or power, but of her newfound integrity and her capacity for good. The road to redemption was nearly over, and Mark Jefferson, with his thoughtful silence and wisdom, had played a vital role in that journey. A few months later, the city had changed. Citizens, once suspicious of certain police practices, were beginning to notice a tangible change in the precinct. Emma Collins had become a beacon of professionalism and respect. Her actions inspired trust and admiration, and she was gradually earning the respect of the community she had once ignored. Mark Jefferson discreetly followed this development. As he walked through town, he noticed the grateful looks of the residents, the way Emma took the time to listen and protect those in need. He understood then that the lesson had been fully absorbed. The initial humiliation in the cafe had been the catalyst for a lasting transformation. One morning, Emma received an official summons from the Superior Court. She appeared nervously, aware of the importance of the moment. Mark Jefferson, still calm and imposing, greeted her with a look that held neither anger nor judgment, but silent approval. "Emma," he said simply, "I believe you have understood what justice truly means. You have not only righted your wrongs, but you have also shown that respect and integrity can change a person, and even an institution." Emma felt her eyes moisten. For the first time, she felt a deep pride, not in her rank or power, but in her ability to become better and exercise true justice. Mark smiled slightly. "You've learned what many take a lifetime to understand, that power is useless without respect and responsibility. Today, you've proven yourself trustworthy." Emma nodded, moved but firm. She knew the road to humility and respect was endless, but she now had a solid foundation to continue moving forward. In that city, an important lesson had been learned: true justice lies not in authority alone, but in the ability to understand, respect, and protect those who depend on us. And thanks to Mark Jefferson, Emma Collins had become the living symbol of that justice triumphant. The cafe where it all began remained in her memory, no longer as a place of humiliation, but as the starting point of a profound transformation, which changed her life and that of those she served forever.